Thank you all for joining us for the Rebel Grad Slam workshop. For those of you that have not participated before, the Rebel Grad Slam is an annual event for graduate students to showcase their research and scholarship in an engaging way. The idea is to explain who you are, what you study, why you study it, what your research question is, how you're analyzing it, and why it matters to people outside of your field using one PowerPoint slide in less than 3 minutes. Students that register for the SLAM will participate in one of the preliminary sessions on either November 9, 10, or 12. Winners of preliminary rounds will move on to the semifinals on November 16, and winners of semifinals will move on to the finals round on November 18th. This year will look a bit different as Rebel Grad Slam will be held virtually, but it will still be a fast-paced and fun event. Joining us today are Nam, 2019's first place winner, Joanna, 2019's third place winner, and Jason, 2019's second place winner, and Dr. Tony, chair and associate professor in hospitality and multiple year Rebel Grad Slam judge. I will now hand it over to them to introduce themselves, and then we'll open it up to questions.
I don't know what order we want to start in. I'm Dr. Tony Rappetti. I am a faculty member here at UNLV. I have been judging the Grad Slam for, I don't even know how many years, probably since it started or I've been here. So I did give this, assist with this panel last year to give some guidance. I am in the hospitality school, and I look forward to seeing, I'm also going to be a judge this year again, so I look forward to seeing your guys' presentations.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joanna Andrews. I'm a recent graduate from the School of Public Health with my PhD in Public Health from UNLV. And I was first place winner, preliminary rounds, first place winner, semifinals, and then third place winner for the finals round.
Hey everyone, my name's Jason Avedian. We're on a mass, but I'm actually at another university right now conducting research, and we have a mass requirement. But I competed last year in the Rebel Grad Slam, finished second place overall. I'm third year doctoral candidate in the kinesiology department.
Hi everyone, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay. My name is Nam, and I am a sixth year in, I'm most likely my last year in the biochemistry program in the Department of Chemistry. I was the first place winner last year for the Rebel Grad Slam. So I'm here to kind of answer and help you guys try to win this year.
Do you guys, Nam, Jason, and Joanna, want to talk about your experience in competing?
Sure, I can go ahead and start. So, as the rules state, so it's 3 minutes. You get 3 minutes, one slide. I think the biggest recommendation that I can give from the experience, I think some of the other panelists might have a little bit different, but I actually didn't try to over practice, if that makes sense. I really only did maybe like 2 or 3 runs through it because this is my thought process in giving these types of presentations. I've spoken with a few other people that if you really try to perfect every single word that you're going to say, it sounds almost a little too rehearsed and a little bit too robotic. So I guess my biggest piece of advice would be to run through it a few times, make sure you're comfortable, but also be able to adapt to your audience too, because this type of presentation is given to the lay person who doesn't necessarily have the greatest understanding of your very in-depth understanding of your particular topic. So I would just be comfortable in being able to share this with a wide variety of people who come from a wide variety of backgrounds. I think is the biggest thing I can give in terms of advice.
Okay, okay, so I guess I'll go next. So one of my experiences is that, well, I practice quite a lot, honestly, just because one of my topic is what I do is really is technical. So it took me a lot of times to not only to like write something or to kind of I guess I should say, think of something that I can crunch it down in 3 minutes that is easily accessible to everyone. just because I work in biochemistry, everything's really technical, and a lot of what I do can't really be translated into layman's term and things like that. So I spend a lot of time actually writing, thinking of how to make it easily accessible to everyone, because I know that my audience and the judges are all very different major from what I do. And then of course, when I practice a lot just to kind of get my timing down. Not only once I kind of memorize everything, get the timing down, I kind of practice like movement, things like that. Do I want to move a lot? Do I want to walk here, walk there? I think just small things to kind of help add to my presentation to make it a little bit different from everyone else.
So I also practiced a lot as well because I'm really passionate about the work that I do, and I tend to can go over 3 minutes as I'm getting really into it. So it was important for me to make sure that I was hitting on the main points, but still within that 3-minute time frame, but not trimming like the meat of my presentation so that everyone can understand it. So I wanted to make sure that the model that I used was easily explainable, that I didn't use too much jargon that was specific to public health, but that everyone understood what I was saying. So it was really important for me to practice so that I can make sure I hit those main points, that it was easily understandable, and also that I was in that 3-minute time frame. So practicing really helped me.
Cool. Okay. We have a question in the chat, and it's can you clarify the purpose of the Grad Slam, why we should participate, and who is the audience?
I can start this one off. I think the biggest thing in terms of being a part of the Grad Rebel Slam is it gives you a good opportunity to practice your knowledge translation skills. I think that's a really big thing now, especially in our scientific fields, is being able to translate knowledge that we have a really vast understanding of, but being able to explain that to somebody who has no experience in your field. Like for me, my research is in concussions and lower extremity ACL type of injuries, but to probably most of the audience members who, like I said, they come from a very diverse background. You have people who have no idea about a single thing about concussions or a single thing about knee injuries, but you, the speaker, the presenter, have that knowledge, but you have to be able to find ways within 3 minutes to really be able to, it's like your elevator pitch essentially for your research and some of the things that you've been doing. So I guess the big overall purpose of this is just practicing those skills, because as you become scientists in the field, whether it's through faculty or whether it's through applied settings, you'll come across situations where you'll be speaking to people who don't necessarily have that understanding, whether it's for like policy change or things like that. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Your audience is generally going to be people who are not from your field, and your judges are going to be usually from very diverse fields who don't have that in-depth understanding that you have.
Yeah, I absolutely I agree with what Jason definitely says, which is to kind of take your really technical research and make it something that the public can easily easily accessible for the public, right? So one of the thing that we always face as scientists, or some people, why people are always so scared of science, is because like to them it's too difficult to understand. Having the Rebel Grad Slam is very much a way for you to practice, kind of basically help you be able to talk about your research to someone like your grandma, for example. That's what I was kind of taught when I was trying to do the Rebel Grad Slam. Can my 3-minute talk be something really easily understand by like someone in my family, or like my grandma, grandpa, who like never graduated high school or things like that? And that's what we're trying to do, make it really accessible to the public.
And another thing that I would add is that we work really hard on our research. So we don't just want to share it with other people in our fields. We want to be able to translate that research to everyone, to an interdisciplinary audience. So I think that the Rebel Grad Slam is really helpful in helping me to really think about, okay, well, what are the main takeaways of my research? And then how can I explain this in a way that's digestible to, people from different disciplines, and that they can understand it and become passionate about my research as well. So I think it's really important that we don't just stay in our silos, but that we can, be able to translate our research to different audiences. That's really important as researchers.
I just want to follow up. All of that is absolutely correct, but I wanted to give a little bit more information about the audience. So your audience is made up of judges who are either faculty member at the university, staff member, or community people. But then you also have everybody else who's welcome to come in. And so it could be your colleagues, it could be somebody who's in another student who's in a college with somebody you're competing at the same time with. So there's a mixture of people in the room. The judges are the ones who do the voting for the most part, but there is an audience award, which is done by everybody in the audience. And so it's sort of a mixture of people, but they do run the gamut on discipline. So depending on, the judges are not necessarily in the area, and neither will the people in the audience be in your area.
Thank you. So this next question that's in the chat, I think is more geared towards the graduate college. How will the Grad Slam be structured for our remote campus? So the Rebel Grad Slam this year is going to look a little different. It's going to be completely online, but we're still going to have all of the components of the traditional Rebel Grad Slam. So we're going to have preliminaries, semifinals, and finals. Preliminaries are going to be hosted via WebEx. So what's going to happen is you're going to sign up for one of the sessions, and we'll send you all the information with the meeting link where you're going to join. You're going to join and present to either me or one of the other graduate college team members, and then we'll record your presentation and send it to a judge, and they're going to score. They're going to get assigned, let's say, like 5 to 7 different students to score, and then you'll get your scores back. And then if you move on to the semifinals will actually be hosted live. So you'll be signing into WebEx just like today. You'll be presenting your research, and we're going to have judges actually scoring you live via a Google form. So we're going to have those results live during the event, and then if you move on to the finals, we're going to have finals also live. We're still not 100% certain of the platform we're going to be using for finals, but it's definitely going to be virtual, just like the prelims and semifinals, and it'll be live. And you're going to be getting scored, like I mentioned, live with judges watching you while you're presenting. So we typically have a top 10 in the finals, and then the top 3 winners. Hopefully that answered your question, Serena.
Okay. The next question in the chat is, can we interact with the audience during presentation? Yeah, I'll leave that up to our panelists.
So I can start it. The short answer to that is, well, I don't know if there's a short answer. Can you interact? I guess it depends on what you mean by interact. You only have 3 minutes. You are not going to have time to have a dialogue back and forth with them. Interact in terms of engagement, or I've seen some students start out with a question where that maybe leads to their topic. So they'll ask people in the audience, how many of you have exposure with this or that? And that sort of gets the ball rolling. So I think that that's acceptable. But in terms of actually interacting back and forth, you want to keep those short, because if you do too much of that, you're going to lose out on your 3 minutes. But I think it's okay to ask them a question to get them engaged in your topic.
And I just want to follow up on that. Thank you. That was my question. Part of what my research is may in fact be, or that it is in fact this type of work that may have some back and forth. So if it proves the point by doing it, then that's okay to do. I just wanted to make sure that the mechanism would allow for a quick hit type of dialogue back and forth.
So I'm going to follow up with, that's true in the past. Because you're recording them now and sending them to the judges, it's not going to work for this year. So normally the answer to that would be yes, because we would all be in the same room together and it would be live. Now, the concern I have is that if you didn't do that in the prelims and you did very well, and then you made it to the next round, which is live, I don't know that you would want to switch up what you did to be successful with.
Thank you.
So I think we jumped over a question as I'm looking really quick. It says, is it only for those on a thesis track? And so I wanted to follow up with that. No, that is not the case. I actually, in our college, we have a lot of our students that we do a professional paper. Some do a thesis, some do a professional paper. We also have obviously doc students who do dissertations. And then we have students that are in their first year that might not even be ready for a thesis. So this is for any graduate student. And I think it's actually important to get exposure early on. Maybe about a topic that you did in a class, maybe a paper you did in a class, or a proposal that you're thinking of to get some feedback. So it is not set to just those on thesis track. It says what is expected from students who are on a client project track. So the only thing I would state there is just make sure that if you're going to do that, that there's no confidentiality issues with you delivering that content. But I come from a very applied field in hospitality. We are very client project based. And so for instance, I make my students in a normal class I teach do feasibility studies. And I said, why can't you present a feasibility study for the Grad Slam, right? It's research, it's just a different type of research. Most students haven't brought me up on that, but no, it's open if that's what you want to do.
Okay, I'll also refer this question to you, Tony, about scoring. Are scores standardized across judges?
Sort of. So we have a grading rubric. So there are so many points for each category. So they're standardized from that perspective. And then just like a rubric you would get in class, it's not only content, but category. So there are, but in terms of would my 4 be the same as somebody else's 4, or would they think that's a 5 or a 3? You're going to have some variation there, but we do have some guidance when we're judging about specifically in this area, what did they get? And here's what they should have addressed. And then what category do they have? Do you have access to the rubrics? Ahead of time, I didn't know that question. Afterwards, yes, but I don't know ahead of time. The other contestants would have to tell you.
I can answer that. I'm going to actually drop the Rebel Grad Slam website here for you. We actually have the rubric on our website, so you can go ahead and open up that PDF and you can see exactly what you're going to be judged on. So it's not a surprise. I'm going to drop it in here for you guys right now.
And Nev, are they still going to get that this year before they go on to the next round?
Yeah, we can definitely still do that. We just have to figure out the logistics of how it will happen.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're making it to the next round, you may or may not need to make a change, but you might notice in one specific category, there could be something you could do to make it better. Keeping in mind that you don't want to do too much changes because you don't have a lot of time between the rounds.
There we go. I dropped both the website with all of the information on there and the scoring rubric, so you all can click on that and see the 4 categories that you'll be scored in.
Awesome, thanks, Nev. So next question to former contestants. What strategies did you implement? Do you believe there are strategies that are unique to and work better in certain fields or for certain types of research?
I think I'm trying to think how to best answer this. I think the best strategy, at least for me, I can only speak for like my research and things like that, is to make it as relatable as possible to the audience and judges. So like things that I would talk about in my 3 minutes is like concussions and knee injuries are pretty common in sports. So I tried to relay the message of, you know, this is what can potentially happen with an adolescent athlete when they play sports. You know, they could hit their head and have a concussion injury, and now they might be at a higher risk for like a knee type of injury. So I tried to make it relatable. I think another thing too with your slide in particular is you really do not want to have a lot of writing and a lot of just stuff on your single slide. You want to make it very easily read. I think is the best way to go in terms of the presentation slide itself. Some of the other panelists might have a some additional thoughts, but I would say make it as relatable as possible and make the slide very clean and easy to read.
Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely agree with Jason, which is make your slide. I made my slide only had I think about like 10 words total, and the rest are just figures. I don't want to overload them with charts. I don't want to overload them with graphs, things like that. I made really easy understandable figures, right? I had step 1, step 2, step 3, done, right? I want to summarize as much of my research as I can into one simple figure. And one thing I always do is one thing I did was that I had my speech. I kind of vetted my speech with my I guess I should say classmate who are in the same major as me to see if they can understand what I'm talking about. I'm not to make sure that my research is not too diluted. And at the same time, I also talk my speech to people who aren't in my major, people who are in social study or hospitality and things like that. So just to make sure that they can also understand what I'm saying. And as long as both of those groups of people like what I say and can actually understand at least 80% of it, then then to me I say, okay, yeah, I would say that's pretty good. So yeah, make your slides easy and then make sure that everyone can understand it by probably make your friend listen to your speech.
Yeah, I agree with both Jason and Nam. I did the same things, just really trying to pull out the key points of my research. So I used the theoretical framework to paint the picture of my research. So I used the framework to just create a simple diagram on my slides to just make the key points understandable. So I made my slide really, really simple to understand, very little text, diagrams to represent everything, and just practicing with different audiences to make sure that everything is understandable. So those are the two key takeaways I would say as well. Making your slides super simple and making sure that your research is understandable to an interdisciplinary audience.
And as a judge, I'll just sort of follow up. If you write too much on your slide as a judge or the audience, we will get distracted from what you're saying because now you're trying to pull us away and we're trying to decide, is it more important that I read the slide or is it more important I listen, right? And sometimes words are important. There was a student one year whose research was all qualitative, right? So the slide, it was very important that she had quotes and stuff on there. So there are times when that works, but I would agree, tables, pictures, charts, those are a much better use of your slide than a bunch of words.
Thank you. Okay, question from the chat. Should the second round be different from the first round?
I think it really depends on how your first round goes because you will at least last year we were able to see our scores and some of the judges' comments, but if you did really well in the first round, I would say just stick with what you did in the second round and beyond if you make it that far.
Yeah, so I would normally say if it's not broke, don't fix it. But now that being said, if you made it to the next round because everything was really good, but you lacked in one section, let's say, and you think you've got enough time to address that section, I think or that one particular part of the rubric, you can, but you made it that far for a reason. So what you don't want to do is put too much on your plate that now you have to memorize or come up with a new 3 minutes and you end up stumbling in the second round.
So I think I can address this next question here. How many people typically enter, make it to semifinals, and then finals? So based on last year, we had about 80 participants. So what we did is we had 10 sessions during preliminary week. So we had, let's say, about 7 to 10 students in each of the sessions. From each session, the top 3 of that one session moved on to semifinals. So basically, we ended up having then 3 sessions on semifinals with 30 total students. So basically from 80, about 27 to 30 moved on to semifinals. And then from that 30, 10 moved on to finals.
Awesome. Thanks, Nev. Okay, next question. I'll ask this to Tony. What, in your opinion, are 2 elements necessary for a clear presentation?
So you need to be able to clearly articulate. So that's just presentation style. And then be able to explain it to somebody who's not in your field, a layman. That's crucial. A lot of times students that practice a lot, practice with their own students. And of course they would know the area because they're students in the same program, right? So I would recommend either asking someone in a different program, or like Nam said, asking, your grandparents or your parents, or just somebody who's not familiar with not only your topic, but your area of research. So that way they'll be able to say, whoa, stop, you just used a word that I have no idea what it means. And so because of that, you lost me. And so those are the 2 things that I would say is make sure that you can articulate your research, and then make sure that you're doing it for the layman perspective.
Thank you. Okay. What do you think is the biggest challenge for contestants? And I'll ask all of our panelists, Tony as the judge and our contestants as former contestants.
I think I can go first on this. I think the biggest challenge would be so you have a general idea of what you want to talk about in these 3 minutes. If for some reason you go off a little off track of what you were going to say, it's the ability to get right back on track without making it seem obvious that you stumbled for a second, because if you waste 5-10 seconds stumbling and getting back on track, those are really crucial seconds and they can mess up the rest of your timing. So it's the ability to be adaptable, that if you don't necessarily say exactly what you were going to say at every step of the way, it's being able to get right back on track, I think, is the biggest challenge. But if you can get through that, I think you can get a pretty good presentation.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Jason because I had that experience. I stumbled for, I think, a sentence or at least a half a sentence in my second round. And on my grading rubric from the judges, they all noticed that I stumbled. Even though it wasn't that apparent that I stumbled, everyone notices. So I would say, yeah. And luckily, I was able to kind of, get right after I messed up, I was able to get back on track and continue what I was saying. So it wasn't that awkward, but that definitely cost me some points. So you need to be able to not only rehearse it well, but also be adaptable and say, okay, if I mess up at this part, you know what you're gonna say next.
For me, the biggest challenge was not focusing on the time clock that was on the side of the stage. So even though I practiced, I really wanted it to interact with the audience and to make eye contact. So you may not always pace yourself because you're interacting. So I would just, kind of glance at the clock a little bit, but not trying to get too consumed as the clock is going down. So that was my biggest thing, to just kind of interact with the audience, pace myself, but only towards maybe the last 30 seconds I would look, and I was always thankfully pretty much right on track, but I try not to get too consumed by the clock because that could really throw you off.
If I could just add one more thing to this real quick, is that you don't want to have a presentation that only lasts 2 minutes, or that only lasts 2 minutes and 15 seconds. You want to be as close as possible to that 3 minutes. Usually I think from what I saw with the finalists, we usually left around at the max 10 to 15 seconds. So we're usually a 2:45 to 2:55, 2:56 presentation. So you really do have to be mindful of the fact that you have those 3 minutes, but you don't want to give a really short presentation.
Yeah, and I think that you want to convince the audience that you really care about your research and that you're engaged, that it's something that interests you. We know that you picked the topic because it interests you, but some of the best presentations, their passion comes through. And then there are others where the research is probably good, but they're just not engaging as a presenter. And that's something that just comes with time and sometimes practice. not always practice. Sometimes it's nice to wing it. But yeah, you want to make sure that your passion comes through to in your presentation.
Hi, so the next question, will we also have a time clock in the virtual format? So like I mentioned earlier, we'll be using WebEx, and then for the finals, we're still figuring it out. We would love to use a virtual format time clock. We're just trying to figure out how that would work, and we're testing some things out via WebEx. So once you all register and sign up, when we start sending you all instructions, directions, we'll include that in there. So I don't have a concrete answer for you right now with how that would look like, but it's definitely something that we are testing, because we would like for the virtual time clock to be an option for the participants.
Awesome, thank you. Our next question. Confidence and assertiveness can be interpreted and received differently depending on an individual and just how they present. So what advice can you share for students looking to build their confidence but are apprehensive as to how they may come across?
So I don't think I've ever seen a student come across as too assertive in a 3-minute. It's probably a little hard to do. I mean, yes, I'm sure you can do it, but I've never seen it. And I'm a pretty assertive instructor myself, and I think that if you're confident in your research and you're passionate about your research, that's going to come through. What's coming through in that 3 minutes is passion and knowledge. I don't think assertiveness is something that normally comes through, that at least that a judge would see.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that too. I think being confident is actually going to be your biggest beneficiary, because you only have 3 minutes and you need to convey to the audience that you really understand this, but that you understand it to the point that you can explain it to a wide audience. So making sure, I wouldn't necessarily be worried about being assertive. I would be more concerned with coming off as being a confident person in your line of research in those 3 minutes.
I guess the only confidence, the only advice I have about being confident is, of course, speak loudly and smile. Definitely on stage.
Okay, thank you. How much is the PowerPoint weighted relative to the verbal delivery? In other words, what is more valuable, an image or words?
So I'd have to go back and look at the rubric again. The actual slide itself is a part of the grading rubric. I'm going to pull it up real quick, but it's only a part of it, right? So like I'm looking at it, and everything is more about presentation. There is under content. Sorry, under communication, did the PowerPoint slide enhance the presentation? So a lot of it's not really about the PowerPoint. Now, I don't mean to say that that's not important, because it absolutely is, because it will lead to your story, because there are certain things that, especially if you're dealing with complicated stats or graphs or charts, you just can't communicate those in 3 minutes, and that's where the PowerPoint would come in handy. So it is important to have it, but it's not the only thing. I mean, what you say. I have seen students that have done their presentation and they literally have 4 pictures, but they're all important to the story, right? So then they'll say, okay, in the upper left-hand corner, this is that. And so there's no stats, there's no words, there's no numbers, there's no charts. It's just 4 pictures, and that's very successful. And then I've seen the others that they actually show their graphs and their charts from their research, because that's needed for their research. So I think it just varies depending on what story you're trying to tell.
Thanks, Tony. So the next question, is the slam recorded? I can answer that one. So we will be recording, like I mentioned earlier, all of the preliminary sessions, and Every year we actually have professional recording of the finals round. So we'll be recording that again. And then the finals round, each of those contestants, we post on our actual UNLV Graduate College YouTube channel so that you can refer back to it and other people can go back and like, for example, right now, if you are registering to present and you haven't before, you can go back and watch all of our finals from last year and just kind of get some pointers to see how they're presenting, different topics they presented on, and how they were able to relay their research to a lay audience.
Thanks, Nev. Next question, what are some strategies that contestants can apply to keep the audience's attention?
I think it's going to be a little different this year because they are going to be pre-recorded, but being in a live audience setting, if you have the opportunity, I guess in the future, I can speak for myself on this. Like my PowerPoint slide complemented to what I was saying. So there was a specific figure on mine that I wanted my audience to be keyed in on. So I related that to the audience. I said, this, because I build skeletons for my biomechanics stuff, and it was right around Halloween. So one of my opening lines was something related to, like, you see skeletons walking around for Halloween. But just like stuff like that, so that you can draw their attention to what you're saying, and then also get them to pay attention a bit onto your slide, and then have them come back to what you're saying. You want your audience to be able to look at it. Your PowerPoint complements what you're saying, and then they come back and they say, okay, now I understand why he put a skeleton onto his slide. I mean, that was just my experience with it.
I had a different experience. So basically, one of the ways that I try to keep the audience kind of focused is I pretty much make eye contact. I basically, when I talk about my speech, I would refer like to my slide, to my background, but then I also look at the audience when I talk to them. I'm not giving them a speech, I'm directly talking to them. So I make a lot of eye contact when I did my 3-minute talk.
I also really intently tried to make eye contact with the audience. I also walked around the room to make it more conversational so that I'm not just lecturing about my research, but everything that I was saying complemented what was in the slide. So I actually walked around the room. I made eye contact with everyone to just keep them engaged in what I was saying. So I think that was a good strategy for me.
And I'm going to follow up. They're all 100% right, but you're going to be in a different world this time. So I have, in the last 9 months, given more WebEx, Zoom, whatever it happens to be, in a synchronous form or recorded. It is very hard because even with this, like right now, the only people on video are the panelists, right? And so you lose that connection. Like normally when you're presenting live, you're able to see, are they shaking their head? Do they understand what I'm saying? If not, let me slow down, or have I lost them? You're not going to be able to do that. So you're just going to have the confidence. You're just going to have to be confident in what you're presenting and researching, because you're going to lose that, that human connection that you will get, at least in the first round. You'll get it after that, but you're going to lose out on that first round. But we'll still be able to see, like I said, your passion and your knowledge come through. I would recommend that. I see this a lot too when we go virtual. Some people will think that because we've gone virtual, they can now read, even if, they're not, they can have notes, even if the notes aren't on the screen. And don't do that. Like, we can still see that you're reading something, whether it's on the computer or, we may not be able to physically see your notes, but I can absolutely tell the way you talk when you're reading. So just do it like normal. If it helps you, something you might want to think about is having someone, if you currently live with someone or you're in an office, maybe have somebody in the room with you, like a live audience, that you can sort of get that feeling from when you're talking to the video. That might help you.
I'd just like to follow up on what Tony just said about the reading. So the reason that we are actually for the preliminary rounds, where you're actually going to be presenting live to our staff, just so we can make sure that you're not reading, you're not using notes before, while we're recording you, and then we send it to the judges. Because if you're just able to pre-record yourself, then you can use all of these, different things that can help you. And if we were in person, you wouldn't be able to use that. So we wanted to make it as authentic and real as possible. So that's why we'll be looking for that, just so you know when you're presenting live to us. And then also the next question down here, can you use transitions in the slides so you reveal different parts of research info at different times of the presentation? So the answer to that is no. So in regards to the PowerPoint, you can't, first, you cannot modify your PowerPoint between rounds. It has to be the same PowerPoint if you move on from the first to the second to the third. And then you can only use one slide. There can be any music, no performances or props, no animation at all. It can just be one clean slide.
Cool, thanks, Nev. So the contestants kind of touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask one more time about avoiding using jargon and getting your time down, because I know once you start avoiding jargon, you have to explain a little more, but you also only have 3 minutes.
I think that just comes with practice over time. Not necessarily always in a presentation setting like this, but just the more comfortable you become with your own research line, the more you have a better understanding of what is considered jargon in your field. Like for me, for example, like mild traumatic brain injury, even though that's like the common, that's the medical definition of a concussion, I would just say concussion at that point, just because you just want to avoid like these really like technical little nichey things that to you is like everyday, common. This is what I speak about, I write about all the time, but to someone else that's, mild traumatic brain injury doesn't necessarily register. So I think that just comes with experience, being able to understand what is jargon in your field specifically, or what is something that an everyday person who doesn't have this in-depth experience could understand.
Yeah, I guess I'll speak more about the kind of the timing down and everything. So when I talk on stage, I get nervous. So it's not like I'm this amazing person who never get nervous. I get really nervous when I speak on stage, and when I do that, I speak really, really fast, right? So one of the way to kind of help me kind of practice my time is that I make sure my speech kind of goes almost 3 minutes long, because I know that regardless of what happens, regardless how many times I practice, I am going to get a little bit nervous. I'm going to speak a little bit faster than I usually speak. So that's what I kind of do to kind of curb my own, weakness, which is speaking really, really quickly. So I just make sure my speech was longer than it should be, and then when I talk, I usually got it timed down to around 2:45. And that's kind of perfect.
Yeah, I agree with both. I pretty much made sure that my speech was a little under 3 minutes because, again, we're trying to interact with the audience, making eye contact. You may go over a little bit, so I don't want to go past the 3 minutes. So I made sure it was like around like 2:45 or 2:50, so that once I'm actually interacting with the audience and engaging with the audience, that I still have a little bit of time to pace myself, so I'm not rushing through it, and then I'm quite almost at the 3-minute mark. And as far as jargon, I just tried to make sure that everything was explainable and understandable to someone that was not inside of my field. So, for example, I study food insecurity. Not everyone knows what that means, but they know what it feels like to be hungry. So that was kind of my hook at the beginning. Do you know what it feels like, to not eat all day or meeting after meeting and you're hungry? People can relate to that feeling, but they may not necessarily know what food insecurity is. So I would try to use terminology like that, appeal to how you would feel if you were hungry. And then now think about a population that experiences that every day, consistently, all the time. And then it drives the point home. So, if you have any questions about jargon, then it's definitely jargon. Just try to make it as simple as possible so that people outside of your field can understand your terminology.
So we have another question in the chat I just wanted to address real quick. Will the judges see us or only hear us in this format? So they're going to be able to see and hear you. With the preliminary rounds, we're recording you. So you're going to be, you'll see, just like you can see me right now, and then you're, as the contestant, are going to be sharing your screen so we can see your PowerPoint. So we'll see your PowerPoint, then we'll see you in the corner. And that's exactly how the judges are going to see you, because we'll just be recording like a screen recording of your presentation. And then same for the semifinals and finals, those are both live, so they'll be seeing you in action while you're presenting. And then I just wanted to add a couple of things. I'm going to drop our Rebel Grad Slam website here again. I just want you to know that this website has all of the rules and regulations. It actually has the authorized Rebel Grad Slam PowerPoint that you're going to be using. So we already created a template for you. We tell you here where to send your PowerPoint and by when. And then we provide you with some rules about the PowerPoint and just about like the time limits that you have, when to sign into your PowerPoint, into your WebEx, I'm sorry. And then you can also register on this website. And once you do, then we'll send you all the follow-up information to make sure you're all ready and prepared to present.
Awesome. Thanks, Nev. So before we wrap up today, does our panel have any last words of advice for our future Rebel Grad Slammers?
I would just
you go ahead. You go ahead first.
I would just say just be confident in your research. No one knows your research better than you. Like, you've been studying this, the whole time that you've been in school. You're familiar with this. No one can contest that. You know your research. Be comfortable, be confident in it, be passionate about what you do. This is an opportunity to share your research with a larger audience, an interdisciplinary audience. So get really excited about that. And I just think the Rebel Grad Slam is a really great opportunity for you to take everything that you've been working on, condensing it to a really powerful 3-minute conversation, and then presenting it to a larger audience. So it's a really great platform for you to disseminate your research. So just be proud and be confident about that.
Yeah, just hopping off of that, I would just say just have fun too. It's actually I had a blast last year. I think the other panelists would have a similar experience. It really is fun. It's a little bit different this year since it's virtual, but just have fun with it. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to nail a perfect 3-minute presentation. Just enjoy the process and just see where it goes. You might end up winning it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both of them. I would say that don't be scared if you mess up in one small part, because I know that in the prelim and the semifinal, I definitely messed up and I still made it through. Okay, so just be confident yourself, and just if you mess up, just move on ahead. You'll be fine.
Yeah, and I would agree. Have fun. I know that public speaking for many is very it's just very frightening for many. But it's a skill that you're if you're in the world of academia, and even if you're a master's student going to go back to industry, you're going to do presentations. It's just what your job is going to be. You're going to be speaking, whether it's to employees or to constituents or to students. And so it's just something that, you'll get used to as time goes, but enjoy yourself up there. It really is a fun experience. And the judges are there to assist you and to make you, we're not there to fail you or to give you a bad grade, right? We're there to encourage you. And so are your other participants there. And so just enjoy yourself. Don't let it, I know that's easier said than done when you get up there and you're like 3 minutes and you're on the spotlight, but definitely just enjoy the process, and you can only get better. For those of you that are in, like this is, maybe you've got a couple more years at UNLV and you don't think you're ready, try it. Start out early, get some of those scares out of the way early so that the next time you go to do it, you're a little bit, better and more prepared.
Thank you. I also just wanted to point out the links that Nev dropped in the chat. She's also put that if you have any questions for Rebel Grad Slam, please email gradrebel@unlv.edu. There are playlists on YouTube. You can check it out. There is a UNLV Rebel Grad Slam playlist there. And reminder that there are scholarships associated with winning first, second, and third place in each round. So thank you all so much for sharing your time and expertise with us today. Your advice was extremely valuable. And thank you to all of our participants for joining us as well. We'll be posting this workshop on the Graduate College YouTube channel for your reference. We hope you have a great day, and we'll see you at the next workshop.
Thank you all.